Hello and welcome to Selcom Basic, How to Add a Panel. Selcom Basic is a free software created by Select Engineered Systems. There is a premium software you can buy, but Selcom Basic should do what you want to. Alright, let's begin. First, we need to add a panel. So click Add Panel to the database. And we're going to name it. You can name it your address. We'll just name it test site. And this is custom. It can be whatever you want to identify it as. We'll create. Great. Now it's given us a pop-up that says it's created a new database file. That's an NDB file. An NDB file, well, it's an MDB file, but it's named NDB. Think of it as new database and then the number. As you get more panels, there will be more files. This is the file that will hold all of your directory information and may allow you to recreate it later on. But you don't need to do anything with this right now, so we're just going to press OK. Now you can see nothing's changed. We have to select our panel in order to make any changes to it. So we're just going to select this drop-down menu, and there we go. Now these are sample panels that you can look at for reference. They're provided by Select Engineered, but we're just going to go straight to Test Site. You can see all these buttons pop up. We'll get to those. For right now, we need to start up here at Edit, Edit Panel Data. Alright, it just yelled at us. Please choose a modem. You can just press OK. We'll get to that. So let's talk about what we have here. You have the delete button if you ever want to delete the panel and start from, or you're just done with it, or you want to start over. You just can press delete and it's all gone. You may not be able to recreate it, so be aware. The street address, this is not mandatory information. It doesn't affect anything. Oh, you'll notice if you tab, it'll go back. At least that's what it's doing on my computer. What you need here is the phone number. Now, I'm just going to give it a generic Chicago number because that's where we're located. And that's all you need in this location information. The user fields and the preferred startup panel is not important. Here in the communications, now you should have figured out if you're going to be connecting via modem, via serial port, or via TCP/IP. Usually people connect via modem. If you are connecting via modem, you will go here and your modem will show up here and you'll be able to select it. So if you click this and there is no modem, that means the software isn't recognizing that there's a modem there. Probably means your computer's not recognizing that there's a modem there. Usually it will show the brand name of your modem. You may see something like COM1, COM3. Usually those aren't going to work. They might, but ideally there will be a modem shown here. Something like a US Robotics or a Connexent. There are serial ports, and that you would need to know your COM port and your baud rate, or your TCP/IP, and you need to know your IP address. We're just going to stick with modem right now. We don't actually have a modem installed on the computer I'm using, so we're not going to be able to connect. Here in the single and multiple panels, that depends on how many panels you're trying to communicate with. A panel is a physical intercom. So if you have, let's say, a building with multiple entrances, and all of your entrances, their intercom is sharing the same phone line, then you can select multiple panels here, and it'll give you how many panels. So for example, let's say I have a front and a rear intercom, so I want 2. I'm going to edit their unit IDs. What a unit ID is, and this is a little important in case your setup is different, a unit ID is how many rings the phone line takes before the intercom picks up. So as you can see, this first one, which would be my first panel that it would communicate, could be my front. And that means on 2 rings, the front intercom will pick up. And on 4 rings, the rear intercom will pick up. Now here, you don't have any other ones. Since you've specified only 2, it's only going to pay attention to these 2 lines of data. So you have your rear, you have your front. If your installer will be able to help you out with what your unit IDs are in case that is causing you to not be able to connect, which you'll be able to tell later, and we'll go into that. For right now, we're just going to leave it as a single panel. All right, so we've got a single panel. The version is important. Version refers to the firmware or the model of your intercom system. If you don't know it, and we're going to just leave it because we don't have an actual panel, if you don't know it, you will be able to find it out later, but ideally, just to save you time, if you can get the version and select it in here, that will be helpful. As you can see, some versions are blurred out or grayed out. That's because Selcom Basic is not compatible with these versions. We'll leave it here. Your capacity, we're going to leave it at 1.2. Your capacity, your codes in your phones. So your codes is the dial-up code. What a dial-up code means is it is the number that the visitor presses to reach the resident. So in order to make a call to a resident, they need to press in a dial-up code. That could be 123. Your capacity is 110. That's the default for the software. That may not apply to your panel. Knowing your codes and phones is important, but it may not stop you. You may be able to figure that out later. But your codes, you can see there's more codes than there are phones. Phone numbers are how many physical phone numbers. Codes are how many directory codes. You might think, well, why is there more codes than phones? My theory on that one, and I actually haven't asked Select about this, but my theory is that it's allowing you some space for a few listings that hold PIN codes that are, maybe some access cards. If you have a fob or a card, you're using that through your intercom system. It gives you a little bit more room. But the capacity means you can have at maximum, which I never recommend anybody have maximum codes and phones. You should really stay, just to be safe for your intercom working well, just as a tip, you should stay, I like to say 20 below. Whatever your maximum is, but we don't need to worry about that. Here it's just showing you what your NDB file is, like I mentioned earlier. So if you ever need to reference that, if someone wants your NDB, you can find it here. All right, but we're done here. We're going to click Finish. So we're back at the front page. We have the buttons. The only other thing we would need to change now is if your password to your system is not the default. So we're going to do that. We're just going to say the password to our system is not default. So we're going to move in here and go to System Settings. All right, so we're in System Settings, and I blurred out the password just for security reasons. But as you can see here, and there is one other thing that would be important in here. So you see you have passwords, and then you have your unit ID. Let's say your intercom installer put it in, but your unit ID is 4 rings. You would need to change this to, oh yeah, when you delete something in the software, it makes a nice loud noise at you. But, you could change it to 4, you can change it to 5, whatever it is. We'll just keep it at 3. And I want to change my password, so you just delete the default. Oh, yeah, didn't like backspace there. I had to press delete. Delete default, and we're just going to change it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then that would be all you needed to change here. You could go over to this area here and fix your codes and your code lengths. So your directory or your PIN number. The directory number is how many numbers is allowed in a dial-up code. So remember I said the visitor would press 1, 2, 3 to call the resident? Well, if you had 4 as your directory code length, they would need to press either 0, 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll just, the default is 3. And then PIN code, it's the same thing. If you want your residents or your maintenance or management to have a PIN, the default here is 4 digits. You can change that. And then here we have, your talk settings and your strikeout settings. You don't really need any of this to set it up. Oh, and this is your title text page. You can change this. I'm not going to delete anything so I don't give you guys any noise, but you can make this say whatever you want. So we're finished. And that is all we need to do to set up the physical panel. Now, so we're going to go to the automatic interface. Now, if you ever don't see the automatic interface button, just reselect your panel. Sometimes the automatic interface button goes away as you use more of these buttons. Just reselect the panel, it'll pop back up. All right, so this is the control center. This is where you're going to communicate with your panel. Now, just for your reference, you'll see there's a lot of stuff grayed out. Those are premium only features. Let's say, for example, the select panels. You can only talk to one panel at a time. If you had your front intercom panel and your rear intercom panel were on different phone lines, you wouldn't be able to program them at the same time. Same goes for actually if you have your front intercom panel, it has the same phone line as your rear intercom panel, but it has two different directories. So you need technically two panels in the software. This may become a problem for you and you may need to upgrade to premium. But I would talk to your installer, look at your setup, get more adjusted to the software to see what limitations may be holding you back. But for now, let's jump into looking at this. So this is our communication. This is where you give the instructions to your panel. So you can see it's called test site. This would be where you, the name of your panel would be. Here's your unit ID that I mentioned, how many rings before it picks up. And just as a note, when you call your system's phone number, you can call it and listen and hear if it's picking up. It will give you a beep noise at the amount of rings. So you may hear 3 rings and then a beep. That means your system is picking up. If you're having trouble connecting and you call that phone number and you never hear a beep, that means your system isn't responding. Your phone is just ringing and it's not going to be able to connect to the software. But that's just a little bit of troubleshooting for you. Your MUI name, if we had multiple panels, like we had that front and that rear with the multiple unit IDs, this would show up here. They would actually show 2 different lines. And then we've got this, will connect to panel using this phone number. That's our generic phone number, but that'll be the phone number of your system. And your modem will show up here. You have your schedule. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, it doesn't let you schedule anything here. Run scheduler, stop scheduler, that's a premium feature, so you don't have to deal with that. And this is where you tell it what to do. So, assign session task. This is directory. dir is directory. Config is configuration. Log, that would be a transaction log. So your system may record who enters and who exits. Oh, well, not who enters and who exits, but who allows access and who denies access, whose fobs work or cards work and whose aren't. So, Mrs. Smith, it will say Mrs. Smith let someone in at 4 p.m. or Mrs. Smith denied access at 4 p.m. It'll go off of the directory listing, but it's a transaction log, and you can pull that and look at it if you want, depending on your system and its capabilities. And then there's the miscellaneous, which doesn't allow you anything. That would be a premium feature. So in the premium tutorial, we could tell you about this one, but you don't need it right now. Now you're going to go, let's say you have all your configurations, but your installer is going to have configurations out in the field. They'll have set things up. This is why some of those settings I said weren't necessary, because the easiest way to begin communication with a panel when you just set it up is to pull your configurations or get your configurations. Now you can see there's a lot blurred out, but all you have the option here is get and send. Let's say you had a blank panel that didn't know anything, or you wanted to change some configurations like your PIN code length or your directory code length, then you would send your configurations. But if you're sure that your intercom in the field, or when I say in the field, I mean at your building, has the correct settings, then you'll just get your configurations. And for right now, we're going to get our configurations. We're also going to assume that our directory is in the intercom and not in our software. Now, if your directory is in your software and not in your intercom, so you really want to start fresh, you can send your whole directory. That will take everything that's in your software and send it to the intercom. But if you don't and the intercom has the directory, then you're going to get the directory. So you're going to pull the directory from the intercom into your software. Just for reference, these buttons here, send directory updates. When you get into changing things, I recommend only using the send directory updates only button. Sending a whole directory takes a long time. you override things, and it can cause, if you don't have the most stable connection, it can cause issues. So really, when you start making changes, hang out in the send directory updates only, and you will need to clear your directory updates flag. But that will make sense as you get into programming. Since we don't have anything in our directory here, we're just going to go get directory. So we've got a G under config and a G under directory. That's good. All you got to do now is click start comms. Now, my computer does not have a modem hooked up, so there is nothing it's going to connect to. But if it did, it would start doing things. Now, look at this progress indicator here, because this is going to be really helpful. As you see, this line went red. Red means it failed. And you're not going to know why it failed unless you look in this progress indicator. So we're going to go up here and look, and you can see this is all just computer stuff that we don't need. But modem required, not listed. Please choose a modem. So it recognized I didn't have a modem and it hung up. Sometimes it'll tell you, like I said, you may not need the version. It'll tell you when your version is incorrect what your version should be changed to. The one thing to look at, if you are reading this and you don't see anything that's giving you any indication of what you have wrong, look at this communication failed. So you see communication failed -50. That number is very important. That's an error code. And the error codes are going to give you a better idea of of what's going on, what's wrong. So let's go back to the main page so we can find out what the error code 50 means. Main page, help and support. It's going to bring you here that your dealer's name, you could keep it here, you can put this stuff in, you could visit their website, you can view the manual. The manual is always here in the help and support. You can tell what version you are in if you ever need that for tech support. But here we go, view error listings. So it's going to open up for me, it was Internet Explorer page, an Internet Explorer page. And you can see this was made in 2015. No, I don't want that. And let's look for 50. There's a lot of them here. You can see there's 79 error codes. I personally have only seen about 5 in all of my years of doing this, and I've been doing this for a long time. Alright, so 50 means user aborted comms. The user terminated the communications. Now, I did not tell it to stop communicating, but because it didn't have a modem, it fell under I said stop communicating. So be aware, sometimes the error list is not going to help you very much. And you may need to bring tech support or your installer into the process so they can help you out with figuring it out. You may have a password issue. You see this 51 is password failure. Something to note, a lot of the times I've experienced where I was setting up a panel and there was a password mismatch and it did not tell me error code 51. It actually gave me error code 13, call status failed. It means disconnected, canceled, or was not answered. This can also be caused by a bad password. So if you get a 13, it may mean that your password is off. So you may need to call your installer or go to your system or talk to whoever does programming or set up the system and have them find out what the password is. You may even need to reset the password. 13 happens a lot. It's unfortunately not the most descriptive error code, but it will tell you something is off. That's the one I get the most. So that's error codes. You're pretty much done now. I just clicked out of that. I pressed done. And what you're going for here, oh, see, I didn't have a panel selected. Let's select our panel. There we go. And you can see here, this is where the panel is selected. You can tell what you're doing. Ideally, you want this bar to go green. When it goes green, it means you've connected and you set up everything correctly and you're good to go. So that would be it. If you are getting an error code or you're getting a red and it's not connecting, remember to look through your progress indicator. See if maybe some of your settings are off. See if your version's off. There are some glitches that come with remote programming that can't be helped. Sometimes you'll get a red error message, or you'll get a red bar and it'll say you can't connect. and then you'll try it an hour later and it will connect. You're working with telephone lines a lot of the time, and telephone lines aren't always the easiest to work with. So if you are programming and you know it should work, let's say someone else has tested it, you've called tech support, they've tested it's supposed to work, and you can't figure out what's going on here, it may be a wiring issue. But hopefully you've done everything right and it goes green and you're good to go. And then you can just go back to your main page and select your panel again and go in and start dealing with your directory, which is another tutorial for another time. But for right now, that's all I've got for you. Thank you so much for listening and taking the time. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to comment. Let me know if there's anything you think I missed, anything you would like us to explain. If you're like, oh man, I'd love a tutorial on what entrance settings are, we can do that for you. These are easy to do. And of course, like, subscribe. We're going to be doing these things for a while. So thank you and goodbye.